When you hear Jefferson High School, what do you think?
How ghetto it is. That a lot of people feel that Jeff doesn't really set them up to succeed.
Yeah, it kind of has a bad reputation.
I think of a really huge jock culture, especially when it comes to basketball and football.
Football. People think of Jeff as basketball and African Americans.
Times that people look at Jefferson High School and they see the largest population of African American students in the whole state, and they're like, because they're black, there's got to be a reason.
I think some people, after they come to school here or after they come to the building, after they meet the teachers and meet the students, then they see that it's like any other high school or even sometimes calmer.
I think there's safety issues at Lincoln, at Franklin, at Cleveland, at Benson. Everywhere you go, there may be some type of safety concern, but our school is no more dangerous or unsafe than any other school. Every school has its challenges at one point or another.
In the 90s, there was a big exodus of white folks who left.
When No Child Left Behind came about, there were more students who had a chance to what we call white flight. They had a chance to leave the black students behind, so to speak.
If you were considered a failing school, students had a choice to leave if they could. So when students were given the option to go to other schools, they were not required to stay in their neighborhood school. A large number of students chose to leave.
8 years ago, Mississippi was different. All along Killingsworth was different, and of course, talking about the gentrification, is that the neighborhood's getting definitely more upscale, more expensive, and I know that the people who've been in the community longer, that's hard. I've talked to people who are now living in other places and having to bus in.
A lot of black kids were moved out of the neighborhood. Black families were moved out of the neighborhood and they started going to Gresham. And living in Gresham, it was kind of racist out there. And these little kids didn't want to go to school out there because they were doing a lot of stuff they weren't used to dealing with. So they migrate all the way from Gresham here to Jefferson. So I think the biggest part of it is probably the amount of people white folks who moved from California to Northeast Portland and were willing to spend $300,000 or $400,000 for a house that's only worth about $75,000.
The 70s and 80s, Jefferson was really going well. They had a strong basketball team. There was a strong community, a sense of community, and other things that was taking place as well too. And there were a lot of professionals came out of Jefferson, actually.
When I started here in September of 1987, Jefferson High School had a drama department where there were 17 instructors. There were 33 in the dance department. I've seen us go from having these rich programs that were renowned really all over the country and in some places all over the world, go completely, with the exception of my department, although I am now the only person in the department, and the dance department.
I hear stories from a lot of the customers that have been longtime shoppers here that went there in the 70s and 80s and tell me about, how amazing it was to have auto shop and radio programming and all this different stuff that I know the school's been defunded really significantly, and I find it really tragic that there's a really large, beautiful school right over there, and I know this year there's, 500 or 600 students there or something, and it's kind of devastating to me that that resource has been so neglected.
The decline of the Arts Magnet program was a sort of a triple whammy. Three things happened. One of those things is that the funds that were state and federal funds that came to the program either disappeared or were greatly diminished. The second is that the Measure 5, a tax quote-unquote relief measure, was passed in the state of Oregon, and it greatly reduced funding to Portland Public Schools, period, just separate from the arts magnet funds. And then third is it was perceived that we had a gang problem. So it was the early 90s. It's when gangs first made the move from the Southern California area up the I-5 corridor to Portland. And I'm not going to say that there were not, some gangs, but in general, the attitude is that, there were gang fights daily at Jefferson. I would, tell people, oh yeah, I teach at Jefferson High School, and they would ask how many shootings or stabbings, have there been, or, aren't you afraid, when in fact this building is one of the safest places to be in the city of Portland.
In 2007 was kind of like, we're down to 300 something students, and I know when they were talking about closing it, that was one of the reasons. But then self-enhancement and middle college were big reasons why they just decided to, go all in.
They had this meeting where they were going to close Jeff. He was going to close Jeff, they were going to close Benson. And Tony Hobson stepped up. He said, you know what, give me Jefferson for 4 years. Let me do something with SEI and PCC, and if it doesn't work, you guys close it. Obviously it worked because it's still open.
We would move the then graduation rate, which was about 54% for the entire school, to an 80% graduation rate. And for the past 5 years, we've been doing what we call the whole school model at Jefferson, which allows any student that wants to be in the SEI program access to our program. And we've seen the graduation rate go up every year to where this last year was up to 84%. And for all of the students that actually attend SEI, graduation rate is over 90%.
Our graduation rates are really unprecedented compared to other large inner city schools throughout the country. They don't graduate 85% of students of color like we are.
The improvement has been staggering. We went from one of the lowest graduation rates to now we have one of the highest graduation rates in the state of Oregon.
I think Jefferson High School is a very, very special place. When Jefferson was started being built in 1909, the Albina neighborhood was an immigrant neighborhood that was looked down on by the upper crust of Portland. And with their gritty determination, the students of the Albina neighborhood proved themselves, back in that time on the field of sports, and that's why Jefferson is called the School of Champions. But that same spirit of struggling against preconception, struggling against the notions that you are less than and you cannot, have really pervaded Jefferson High School throughout its history.
One thing that I've always appreciated about Jefferson High School is that Jefferson allows kids to be who they are, whether you're white or you're black or you're gay or you're whoever you are.
Culturally, there's a family feeling that goes on in this building that walking around other schools I don't feel.
The greatest strength of Jefferson has always been the community of students and the community of the neighborhood itself. The strength of Jefferson has always been the diversity of the students, the diversity of the staff in the community, and where in a lot of places that much diversity can cause tension, here it always just seems to work out. People really band together. I think some of it is because we end up having a Jefferson versus the world mentality. So, there's always forces outside trying to tear Jefferson down that really just makes the community come together and be stronger. So.
Shout out to Jefferson High School for still standing, because they've tried to shut us down a million times and we're unstoppable. Every time they try and shut us down or eliminate a program at Jefferson, we continue to fight and show that against all odds, we're still standing. We're still going to fight for every program, every college class, every educational opportunity that we can possibly have. We're still going to fight for that. So shout out to Jefferson High School. We're still standing.